Oh, yeah, we're live. Here we go.
Oh, it smells good in here.
Rebel Force Radio presents
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
This is the RFR Mandalorian After Show.
I think it's safe to say that perhaps outside of the debut of the series itself, that this week's episode of The Mandalorian is the most anticipated. Ever since those rumors started to circulate, a year ago, about Rosario Dawson playing a live-action Ahsoka Tano? And then once the leak started about Dave Filoni writing and directing the 5th episode of this season, I think we all started putting 2 and 2 together and quickly realized that this would likely be the big debut. And boy, oh boy, was it ever a big debut of a beloved character that when you think about the history of this character and how we actually met her, we met her, if you can believe it, in a feature film. It was an animated feature film, and she was dropping all kinds of little catchphrases on us, like Sky Guy and Artui and all of this. And he said, "Oh, we don't want any part of this. We don't want any part of this." And then fast forward more than a decade later, and we're sitting just gnashing our teeth waiting for her to debut in a live-action Star Wars TV series. It's an amazing, amazing history and an amazing glimpse into Star Wars fandom. And wow, what an episode to talk about this week. We are chock-block full of topics. And I got to say, it answered a lot of questions. I feel like this episode delivered when it comes to giving us a little bit of backstory about some of these characters, but in true Star Wars style. I think that it also asked maybe a lot more questions than it answered, and we would have it no other way, I think. Nothing black about this Friday. Happy Thanksgiving. 1 day removed for those of you in the States, as this episode premiered originally on November 27th, 2020. We've got a great roundtable to discuss it, starting with, of course, none other than my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. I don't know. The anticipation was off the chart this week, Jason, for the big character reveal and the actor reveal of Dylan Alvarado as Village Boy. Man, the whole internet just blew up when he hit the screen. Did anybody notice? No? Hello?
I know. I've got it right here. Yeah.
Is this on? Okay. No. Of course. How amazing was it to see Ahsoka Tano in live action? Did it throw you off a little bit because it wasn't animated Ahsoka voiced by Ashley Eckstein? I don't know. I think we are a little bit more familiar with the character herself and ready to look at any consistencies or inconsistencies that may have occurred in this live action debut for Ahsoka Tano. So I'm looking forward to talking about that and the amazing story itself and the amazing reveals about Baby Yoda, sweet baby Grogu or whatever that. Listen, if they want to ensure that we're going to continue to call this character Baby Yoda, they gave him the right name. That's all I got to say. But Grogu is beginning to grow on me already, and I really prefer that to the child. So either he's Baby Yoda informally, or I will go for the formal Grogu, because nothing was cuter than when the Mando finally said his name for the first time, and that little floppy-eared dude turned his head in response like, a puppy learning his name. It was wonderful.
He gets me. He knows who I am, finally.
Yeah. So, I mean, what a lot of joy coming out of this episode in more ways than one. But I guess that depends on what kind of baggage you carried into this episode as a fan. And that's something else I think we're going to talk about a little bit on this episode as well. So I'm really looking forward to it and breaking it down with our roundtable guests, plural, this week.
Yeah, we've got a great roundtable, as always, but starting with a guy who is certainly no stranger to the character of Ahsoka Tano, much less the actress that gave her first life in the form of Ashley Eckstein. I'm talking about the former president of the Lucasfilm fan club and the former president and the founder of the official Star Trek fan club back in the day. You may know him as Dams Denna from Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, but we just call him Dan Madsen joining us. And he's sporting, look at this. Now, I know it's Black Friday as we're recording this. This is maybe more appropriate for President's Day, but still, he's got the one and only, the only one that's ever been made, I think, Abe Lincoln tribute button-down shirt. But you're looking great, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you, guys. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, the last time that we were together, we saw Dan's bedroom. Now we see the kitchen. And it looks like your kitchen survived the Thanksgiving holiday just fine.
It did, and we've got holiday lights up behind me. Can you see those?
Yes, definitely see them.
Very festive.
That's thanks to my wife. She did all of that lovely lighting work in the back.
Good old Des. Hey, and so let's just cut to the chase. And the main reason why we've had you on the show this week, we want to hear Des, your lovely better half. We want to hear her Baby Yoda impersonation. That's the only reason we're having you on the show this week.
Get over here.
Get her over there. Here she
Hold on,
comes. She's been waiting for this
Give her a
moment.
minute. Get behind me here. Here she comes.
Hey, Des.
Hi, guys.
Hey. That's Des, ladies and
Good
gentlemen.
to see you. All right,
Let's hear it. Baby Yoda.
Eh?
That's very
I
good.
can't do it when I'm laughing. Eh?
If you remember last week when he goes, put the blue wire where the red wire goes, and he looks at him and goes, what?
Well, I'm in the kitchen now, and since it's you guys, I can crack a dirty joke. It's easier to do in the bedroom. I'm leaving now.
And there she goes. Goodbye.
I
Short
love
but
it.
sweet.
I love it. Also joining us this week, and we're so glad to have him whenever he can, and whenever he decides to stay up late with us. He may not be bringing the video, but he's bringing a lot of great video content this week. I'm talking about our pal Paul Bateman joining us. Welcome back, Paul Bateman.
Hey guys, hello everybody.
Hey.
Nice to be back.
Good old Paul. Glad to have you
Like
back,
Busters,
man.
isn't it? Like no Busters for ages and then two at once.
Look at the four of us here together. Isn't this amazing? I've got notes upon notes about this episode, gentlemen, and you know, this is one of those where it's like, gosh, you know, we could talk a little bit about the plot, and I think we ought to, but there are some huge questions that have been asked by this episode, and there are, of course, some answers that we got as Jimmy Mac brandishes his Baby Yoda, or should we now call him Grogu? And you know, Jim, you brought it up. You said, look, if they ever wanted to ensure that we were going to continue referring to this character as Baby Yoda, no better way than to name him Grogu. But I gotta ask. I mean, in all seriousness, is this going to take off? Are we going to see action figures? Are we going to see merch on the shelf with the name Grogu? Come on, Jimmy Mac.
Yes, we will. Absolutely.
We will.
Listen, if they're going to market this little guy as the child, I think we're definitely going to start seeing some Grogu stuff on the shelves. And because I think that's what he's going to be run with as far as the company line goes. We've been listening to the child coming from all sort of Lucasfilm reps. Now that this little guy, this precious little sweet Baby Yoda has a proper name, hopefully that puts the irritating child moniker to rest. And we will just know him as simply Grogu or Baby Yoda, because the Baby Yoda nickname is never going to die. It's always going to be there. But now that he has a name, I'm happy with Grogu. I am. We got tipped off to Grogu earlier this week, so I had time to prepare for it. So I don't know how I'd be reacting if I had only been with Grogu for less than 24 hours. But I've been living with Grogu for the better part of this week, thanks to a tip we got about his name reveal, and I can roll with Grogu. Yoda, Yaddle, and Grogu. Those are the only canonized characters of this crazy green floppy-eared species that we know. And I'm good with it. I'm good with Grogu. I'd like to know who came up with the name. I think it would be Jon Favreau because Jon actually is the one who invented the character. But Dave Filoni is the one who wrote the script for this episode. And I believe this is the only episode of season 2 that is written by a source other than the great Jon Favreau himself. So I wonder, how much they armed Dave with before he went to the writer's room.
I thought a lot about this, the naming, and I'm so excited that we have Dan Madsen on because last time I checked, none of us ever sat in a room one-on-one with George Lucas and interviewed him other than Dan Madsen. And Dan, you probably know of the four of us, the way George's mind works. Does Grogu sound like it could potentially be a Lucasian name? Could this have come from George Lucas?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I personally don't think that came from George. I think that's a Favreau or Filoni invention, and they may have ran it by George, and he said, yeah, go with it, But I don't know, Grow. He's a little guy. He's going to grow goo. Maybe he has gooey stuff that comes out of one end to the other, and
the reason I thought George
together, Grogu. I'm sorry though. I'm still stuck on Baby Yoda. I'm gonna have a hard time. It's gonna take me a while to start looking at pictures of him and say, "Oh, that's Grogu." I hardly ever use the child. I always use the term Baby Yoda. And there was that catchy little song with the little video. That little Baby Yoda, baby. Do you remember that? We had the little cartoony thing with
the
Baby
chicken
Yoda
nuggies one.
I saw a video about Baby Yoda video memes, but
chicken nuggets is the one I saw.
So I don't know. I'm hard pressed to not keep calling him Baby Yoda, but I agree with Jimmy Mack. I think they're going to be saying Grogu at some point on all the merchandising as they move forward.
Well, the reason that I suspected George is because of two things that we know. One thing is that, particularly during the prequel era, George would catalog, he would write down sounds that his kids would make over the years. And we got to see some of that stuff show up in the naming of characters. Gungan, for example, I think was something that his son Jet, he would hear him say or something.
Jar Jar was Jet came up with Jar Jar.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm remembering, but so
yeah,
it was one of those
Jet
things. So
Jar
Jar. And so that George cataloged these sounds, these words, this gibberish. And when I heard Grogu, I thought, well, I feel like I've heard one of my two children perhaps say Grogu at some point. Like that's such a kind of a baby thing. Paul, you've been around Star Wars for a long time. What do you think about the naming of this character, Grogu? You're steeped in not just the Star Wars franchise, but many other franchises. When you heard the name, what was your thinking about it?
I thought it was cute. I mean, it sounded like maybe like the name of a gremlin or something like that. Like Gizmo. It's got that kind of a vibe to it. But I also thought, because Dave's such a huge fan of Godzilla and those kind of monster movies from Japan, it also sounds like some kind of creature from a Godzilla film. So I think maybe there's a bit of that in there, But yeah, I like it.
That's a good point.
It's weird though. I'm on the same page as Dan. I think I'm going to be calling him Baby Yoda for a long time. Baby Yoda, Grogu.
Is there something? I don't offend anybody here. I'm saying the wrong thing, but is there something Japanese or Asian about that name? Certainly, maybe the phonetics of it, Grogu.
Earlier this week, when I heard the name, I looked it up on Wikipedia, and there is something called Grogu, Grogue, but it's also known as Grogu, just like the spelling of Baby Yoda's real name. It's an alcoholic beverage made from sugar cane. It's made from sugar cane, okay? And it's found in very remote parts of like Spain, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. I sure could go for a cupful of it right about now, though. But Grogu, yes, it's an alcoholic beverage from Cape Verdine, where I don't even know where Cape Verdine is, but it sounds like a wild place because they're drinking Grogu. It's also known as the Republic of Cabo Verde. Cabo Verde. It's an island country in central Atlantic Ocean. Thank you, Wikipedia. But Grogu. So, I mean, there is an actual Grogu in the real world. Cape Verde.
But you know, there's a
alcoholic
show.
beverage.
There's an anime show called Dragon Ball Z, and there's a character on that show called Goku. It's not exactly Grogu, but it's kind of similar, you know.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's been a few times when I've growed goo, and no, we're not going to talk about it.
Wendy,
she's not home. Nobody can bail you out, Swank.
all
It's
right.
going to be that kind of show.
Okay, so we get some insight. I want to go and I want to read, since we're on the Grogu bandwagon, I wrote this down verbatim because I thought this was so important in terms of this character. This is what Ahsoka says to the Mandalorian, that he was raised at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Many masters trained him over the years, many masters. At the end of the Clone Wars, when the Empire rose to power, he was hidden. Someone took him from the temple. Then his memories, dramatic pause, dark. He seemed lost, alone. I've known one other being like this, a wise Jedi Master named Yoda. So with that, there's a lot in there. Is he a clone? No, he's not a clone. He's just Grogu. He is not a clone. Now,
Queel said he was... Queel seemed to put that to rest in season 1, that he wasn't a clone, but he was so specific in his terminology saying strand cast, they left the door open for us to assume, well, maybe he's a different type of clone than a strand cast. But I think strand cast might just be another general word for clone. So
Yeah. So we can.
But I'm so happy he's not a clone.
Me too.
Well,
I'm glad he's not a clone.
Yeah, I mean we do know now. We can't completely disassociate himself or disassociate Grogu with cloner activity, because we know that his blood was being used, perhaps his DNA was being used in cloning experiments. But I think the thing that really blew my mind, Paul, was he was at the Jedi Temple, predates the Clone Wars. He was hidden after the Clone Wars with the rise of the Empire, and then his memories become dark. So, what would you say if you had to speculate, which I'm asking you to do, Paul, friend or foe, in terms of who took Grogu out of the temple, put him into hiding, and were they connected to the path that his destiny took later on, where he ended up in the clutches of the, whomever that was on Navarro?
Well, first of all, I think the thing that surprised me about that, I think it was probably one of the most emotional moments in the show, even though it wasn't really kind of spelt out. But I think we all come at this stuff from our own kind of personal life experience and stuff. And I've had a lot of experience of dealing with people with post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a long story, but and to me, this struck me as this is like Baby Yoda is probably suffering with PTSD. And my first go-to was like, this kid saw Anakin kill all of his friends, and he went into shock.
Whoa!
So he's probably hiding, saw something that he was too young to handle, and hence his mind went blank. So I think if he got out of there, it would have to be somebody who knew him and cared for him, because there's no way that kid escaped Anakin's kind of lightsaber without being hidden and somebody having some idea that he should be there, But I don't know. That was my go-to. Was it just felt like this kid's damaged. He's not just, he's not just lacking in power. He's kind of, not only is he hiding his powers to keep safe, it feels like it's very motivated by something he's not in control of. If he wasn't there, this would be a decision that could probably be easily U-turned, but clearly he's had an experience that's left him in this state of, being completely out of character and appearing to be powerless. So I had a lot of guesses. I was thinking maybe Mace, because we know he went out of a window. We don't know what happened to him after that.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, can I cut you off real quick before I lose this comment? This is from Kyle in the live chat. He says, Mando puts Grogu on the stone at the temple, and Mace Windu comes out of nowhere only to be attacked by Boba Fett, who has been tracking them with his armor, and he is there to avenge his father's death. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I love that idea. Because it all ties in. Because you have motivation, you have the motivation. You bring Boba Fett back into it, and he's you have the double jeopardy with Boba Fett. He wants his armor back from the Mando, and he's got Mace Windu right in his grasp. All right, Paul, please continue. I hope I didn't just take the wind out of your sails, but I got so excited when I saw Kyle's comment.
My first thought about that was this is why they pay Kyle enormous amounts of money to come up with fiction. And this is why he should be writing Star Wars. That's so beautifully constructed and simple and clean and makes perfect sense.
It wasn't our Kyle, just so you know. It was a guy named Kyle Wright.
Oh, another Kyle.
Kyle Wright. I should clarify. It wasn't Kyle.
It must be Kyle's in general then.
The Kyle.
So are you sure it's not a clone of Kyle? Could be.
It could be.
Or maybe it has
just
some
real Kyle Newman.
Some of Kyle's blood.
Yeah. I wonder, does he know there's another one of him going around?
Paul does bring
that does sound like an idea that would come from Kyle Newman. Yeah, but Paul does bring up Kyle Wright.
That I hadn't thought of. I mean, yes, there was a part of me that was thinking about Baby Yoda, Grogu being taken from the Jedi Temple, the same Jedi Temple that we're so familiar with. I feel like we could, all of us could walk through it. But the Anakin Skywalker angle, the massacre angle, Dan, what do you think in terms of the possibility that Grogu could have actually witnessed this with?
I agree with Paul. I think probably he did, and I think if you remember, Ahsoka says there's much fear in you, and I think in part that could be because he witnessed Anakin slaughtering all the younglings. And, it's a horrible thought to think of that, but I actually think that he may have. And, it's funny. The minute I heard her say there's much fear in you, the minute I heard her say that, I thought, I wonder if he witnessed Anakin doing his dirty deed.
I took a different approach to that. Based on some other dialogue in this episode. The fear she senses in Baby Yoda is all generated by his love and attachment to the Mando. And he sees the Mandalorian in constant peril in these life-threatening situations time and time again, and that's begin to weigh on the little dude. And that is the source of his fear, is losing his father figure in battle, or in, who knows how crashing that ship of his that he's crash landed so many times. Sooner or later, the cat runs out of lives, and I think Baby Yoda senses that and worries that he's going to lose the Mando. And that's where his fear comes from. It's the attachment. That's why Ahsoka refused to train him. Now, Ahsoka may have also refused to train him. She does claim because of the attachment to the Mandalorian may lead him to follow his emotions down the dark path. And that's why Jedi were forbidden from having attachments to begin with. You can't commit yourself to the Force in all of the training that is required for you to master it if you have these personal emotional attachments to other individuals. And the reason being because those other individuals are going to go live their own lives and bring whatever they encounter onto your doorstep, and you're going to have to deal with it. And sooner or later, the human element takes control and may push someone down the dark path. She sees that in Baby Yoda. Or she is still no Jedi, as she has said before. I'm no Jedi. Ahsoka, I'm no Jedi. Tano may also, reveal, because she did lie to the Mando. She said she would train Grogu I can't do it. She would train sweet Baby Yoda if he accompanied her on the mission to defeat the magistrate and retrieve information from her. And the Mandalorian followed through with that. He gave her his word, and she did not follow through likewise. She BS'd him and welched on her end of the deal. Why did she do that? Maybe because she is incapable of training Jedi, because Ahsoka, I'm no Jedi, Tano.
All right.
She seemed like she could help him a little bit more.
All right, Dan. Dan
no,
first.
I was just going to say it, then I'll let Paul talk. I was going to say she seemed like she didn't help him that much. She could have helped him more. And so maybe there is something to that, Jimmy. But go ahead, Paul.
I just think it's too dramatic a moment visually. I mean, as soon as she started talking, I could so easily picture the poor little fella hiding in a cupboard somewhere, getting an eyeful of Anakin chopping up the kids.
He was reluctant. I could easily see her.
I could easily see, like in the fifth or sixth season, where they're trying to kind of unblock his, whatever issues he might have down the road, that they have to kind of like bring those memories out of him, and I could quite easily see them kind of present us with that kind of reality, because it's horrible, but it does tie it back to the old movies, and they do like to do that stuff,
Paul, that's an interesting thought because, wait a minute now, there are holocam recordings of what happens there because they see that. So, but I was thinking, like, could Grogu be the key to unlocking the mystery of what might have happened at the Jedi Temple, that night? But let's turn a little bit away from Grogu for a moment and let's talk about Ahsoka. Star Wars is known for incredible entrances. Darth Vader's entrance in the original Star Wars: A New Hope, as well as I think his entrance in Return of the Jedi might even be better in some ways. But great entrances of characters. And what I loved about this entrance of Ahsoka is all the buildup was in prior episodes and on the message boards of websites and in the comments of social media posts. There was no buildup with this episode. They put you right in the midst of it, and there she was, white cloak and all, double lightsabers, double blade, or two lightsabers, just an incredible moment for Star Wars fans to see this character, as I said in the beginning, go from being widely criticized. Now, granted, that character evolved. So what I think fans were reacting to was a very early concept of the character that it would take the likes of Dave Filoni and Ashley Eckstein to evolve it over the years, but still a widely derided character to being the most anticipated character to show up in a live-action Star Wars series, outside of, perhaps the legacy characters of the original trilogy. It's just an incredible evolution for that. And so she shows up out of the fog, and one of the things that I've reflected back on was there was a rumor at one time that there was a proposed series that would take place, animated series, that would take place after the events of Return of the Jedi, would focus on Luke Skywalker being an almost wraith-like vigilante that would just pop in and out and solve problems for people. You could say a Batman-like character. We've been using the Batman as an analogy on the show to talk about the Mandalorian's incredible utility and all of his gadgets and everything. But that sort of ghost-like vigilante figure that they had talked about in this animated series. Well, that's what I saw unfolding at the beginning of this episode. Paul, it sounded like you wanted to jump in there. This Ahsoka that attacks by, I would say, quite aggressively in covert, cloaked ways. Going back to what Jimmy was saying, she's no Jedi. Is this what we've come to expect of Jedi in battle?
I think initially I was thinking, how on earth are they going to pull off a lot of different things about Ahsoka that when you look at this, it's such an unusual situation in that we've gone from an animated character to a live action character, and it's usually the other way around. So to suddenly kind of transform a character that we're used to moving like animated characters can, namely without limitation and capable of doing anything, and moving in a bizarre kind of almost inhuman way that cartoon characters can. I was thinking, how on earth are they going to kind of pull that off without it being potentially a bit much or just looking strange? So I think this was a clever solution in terms of making her super fast and I almost thought it was better than George's solution. When you look at the Jedi kind of zooming around in The Phantom Menace, I always thought they looked like Roadrunner, whereas this is properly creepy. I mean, the way she just kind of like faded in and out of the darkness was fantastic. Did you guys spot the owl? Did you see that she had
I was
going
to ask about that. Now, is that a convor?
Yeah, it was a single convor looking over him. I had a close look at it. Yeah,
I've heard some fans talking about it, and I've yet to spot it. Where can we find it, Paul?
All right, it's about let me see. I think it was about 15:30, something like that. But it was in one of the. I'll send you an
what is the scene?
If you want it.
Do you know what the scene was?
It's when the Mando is just hunting for her through the trees, and the up in the top left, the owl is looking at him from the trees.
Oh wow!
So and what was it? Isn't the whole connection there to do with like Ahsoka's death and it being the pet of the daughter and all that from the Mortis trilogy? So it was daughter's owl that ended up sort of having a connection to Ahsoka. I think that's the gist of it.
I thought there might be that this convert would show up at some point. Remember actually the planet Corvus is the scientific name of crow in our own world. So, Ahsoka's attachment to that, that creature. Now, Paul, you were kind enough to send us some really great visual. Anybody who is not following Paul Bateman on his Facebook page, he puts out so much cool stuff from stills and images that you've never seen before or haven't seen in the context that Paul shows them. He put together a great series of visuals for us, including this one right here, which shows us the evolution of the character.
Look at that.
Oh, that's cool.
I think I'll just grab that myself off the net. I think I just grabbed it.
This isn't a Paul Bateman. Somebody put this together, but it's great. We see at the top left here. For those of you listening to the audio podcast, we see this is from the flashback scene from the Clone Wars, as baby Ahsoka, young Ahsoka, was being found by Master Plo, and then it carries on. And Paul, I mean, you sent this to us. What does this show? Does it show that you think that they've created a very logical evolution of the character?
Well, I think it's more about. I mean, I thought that people might be interested in kind of looking at this in terms of just seeing whether or not the character resembles Ahsoka, and I felt like there was quite a big leap between seasons, but generally her look stayed the same throughout the Clone Wars, and then obviously when Rebels came around, she suddenly transformed quite a bit, and I liked the kind of Ahsoka the White transformation, but I wasn't too keen on the actual facial model. It felt like a totally different person because she's always had such a kind of elfin look, such kind of quite full lipped and large eyes and stuff like that. I felt like they lost all that with the adult version of her. So, and I almost feel like Rosario's version is kind of halfway between the two. So that worked for me. The thing that was interesting to me was how much the I don't know if they're called Leku with her species, but the head tails, how much they changed over time. And one of the criticisms I've noticed quite a lot is people saying, oh, the head tails aren't long enough, and for me, I just looked at this and thought, no, this is kind of like expecting superheroes to look exactly like their cartoon counterparts, when you look at something like Wolverine. Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that the reason the head tails are at the length they're at is because the stunt people found it cumbersome to perform with anything bigger than that? So there is probably a practical reason.
Yeah.
Because if you notice, Katie Sackhoff, when she appeared a couple weeks ago as Bo-Katan, she had very screen accuracy when it came to the look of her character compared to the animated look of her character. It was perfect. And so you know that the production crew is striving for that authenticity and that consistency. So I think there has to be a practical reason why we're not seeing her with these big, giant, long head tails. It's probably having to do with the fact that this is an action-oriented character, and the people performing those stunts and fight choreography need to have full range of all their moves. And those head tails I could see being very restrictive.
Yeah. I think there's also an element of, like, remember there's the large percentage of the audience has maybe not even seen the animated version. So they like seeing a full length, you know, Lecky might be a bit of a surprise for them, especially if they're not a hardcore Star Wars fan and it's just an average television viewer. You know, it might be quite a tough thing to kind of go with if they're not already a massive Star Wars fan. And I'm sure there are people watching this that aren't huge Star Wars fans. You know, I'm sure it's getting a wide audience. You know, so
totally,
yeah,
now,
yeah.
Dan, look, here's the deal. I mean, we all have gotten to know the wonderful Ashley Eckstein over the years. You've worked with her professionally. You know her personally, and it seems to us that perhaps the news that there would be another actor going in the role was a surprise to her, and perhaps maybe an unwelcome one. I'm just curious to get your thoughts of how you felt Rosario Dawson did in capturing the character. Did it work for you? Were you was it a tough position for you to be in as you were sitting home watching it with the missus and all that? Just what is your, if you wouldn't mind giving us your perspective of seeing this character debut in a live action?
Well, first off, with every other episode of The Mandalorian, the imagery in this show is just incredible. I mean, the direction, the visual effects, the dialogue, everything was just stunning, as it is, as I say, in every other episode. I was really disappointed that they didn't cast Ashley as Ahsoka, because as I watched Rosario Dawson perform as Ahsoka, I could have totally seen Ashley doing that, and it would have. I think, you know, the voice would have been right on, because obviously it was Ashley's voice doing Ahsoka. And even more important than that, at least for me, I always felt that Ashley was the heart and soul and the spirit of Ahsoka. And I think she would have brought that to the live action version of it. And under Dave Filoni's direction, I could have totally seen her doing that. I mean, she's physically fit. She could have done any of the physical action that Rosario Dawson did. I realize some of that was stunt people, but, there was still some stuff that Rosario had to do. And I know Ashley could have easily done that. I think, Rosario did an acceptable job. She did okay. And, you put that makeup and the costume on, it helps bring to life the character of Ahsoka. But for me, and I think there's a lot of fans out there who are also of the like mind, that, Ashley was the heart and soul, and still is the heart and soul of Ahsoka. And yes. It's hard for me to bring myself to completely embrace this live action version of her, because it's not Ashley. And I think she could have done, I think she could have killed it. I really do. I have no doubts in my mind that Ashley could have done a fantastic job in this part. And I think it would have even made it even more realistic to the animated character, because it would have been Ashley's soul, her spirit, that had brought the voice and the animated character to life, doing it now for the live action. And I'm just, I was disappointed. And not that I don't like Rosario Dawson. She's a great actress. I've seen her in a lot of things, and I like her. And I think, like I said, I think she did an acceptable job. But for me, and I know there's a lot of fans out there that would agree with me, I think it could have been better with Ashley in that part. And that's just the way I feel.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for being so candid, and also speaking for a lot of fans that feel very similar. They looked at Katie Sackhoff. They're looking at Tim Morrison. Now, Tim Morrison isn't an animated voice actor coming in, but the sense of continuity. They're looking at Ewan McGregor. They're looking at this desire, and whether it be James Earl Jones doing voice of Darth Vader in animation, there has been an effort to create this continuity between the two universes when possible. And the Ashley Eckstein casting does jump out as being somewhat irregular.
Jason, the other thing, just quickly to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but the other
no,
thing
it's
is
all
that,
right.
If Ashley wasn't physically right for the part, that would have been a whole different story. But Ashley physically is right for that part. And I remember when Clone Wars first came on and I first met Ashley, I said, her face almost looks a little like yours. I said, I even remember asking Ashley, I said, are they animating it to look a little bit like you? Because I said I see a similarity there in the eyes and such. And she said, no, that's just the way they drew the character. But Ashley physically is right for the part. Age-wise, I think she could have brought it off, and physicality, she could have brought it off. And I think easily with Dave's direction, who's already directed her in how many seasons of Clone Wars and Rebels, she could have easily brought that character to life every bit as well, if not better, than what Rosario did. And I'm sorry if Rosario sees this and she's like, well, hello, Rosario did great and she did fine. But for me, Ashley is Ahsoka and will always be Ahsoka.
I really appreciate Dan saying that. If I can, I want to just say something myself. I came into this as open-minded as I could. I know Rosario for several years was even openly lobbying for the role of Ahsoka. Now, whether or not she was doing that before they had talked to her, that's still a mystery to me. But because it seems like a bold move for an actor to do that. And we're seeing something similar going on right now with Ming-Na Wen, who did an interview last week begging for fans to petition to bring back Fennec Shan. But we already know that she shot her sequences on the set. So it's kind of like a manufactured sort of fan push, So at the end of the day, when Fennec Shan does finally show up on the show, Lucasfilm and Disney will look like the heroes to the fans because they listen to the fans and they answer the petitions. But that's all orchestrated stuff that's manufactured in a PR office somewhere. With Ahsoka Tano, Ashley Eckstein had such a strong connection to that character where I believe the character of Ahsoka really bled into Ashley's day-to-day lifestyle. And she's told me this. She's personally told me this, that she would go through situations when things got really tough for her, and she would say, well, what would Ahsoka do? And I really appreciate that, and I love that about Ashley. And she did so much. I really don't think that the fan connection with the character of Ahsoka Tano, and I'm talking as someone who has been intimately involved with the Clone Wars since its very launch, and I saw the fan reaction to Ahsoka, and it was an uphill climb for Ashley from day freaking one. And I think the reason that Ahsoka Tano resonates so much with the fan community is because of Ashley and the spirit of Ashley Eckstein. And I scratch my head and I go, Dave Filoni is the director of this episode. He's an executive producer of this series. He wrote the script for this episode, and he's worked with Ashley for over a dozen years on this character. 15 years they've worked together on this character. So where was Ashley? She's an on-screen actress. She's not exclusively a voice actress. She's a very talented on-screen actress. Anyone who's watched That's So Raven knows what I'm talking about. She's Buffy. No, but I kid. But because I'm just saying that She has an extensive on-camera resume, and I think she would have embodied the character as well as she voices it. So
she was so invested in the character herself, and she said the same thing to me so many times. That so many situations she's come into and she's thought, well, what would Ahsoka do? And that's why I say she's the heart and soul and the spirit of Ahsoka. She helped develop that character with Dave, and I think it could have brought an even more realistic touch to Ahsoka to have had Ashley in the role. And so, I realize there's others that make those decisions. What their logic was behind that is, I'm not sure. But I personally was disappointed in that decision.
I'm disappointed because I believe that Dave Filoni had all the clout in the world to cast her in the role, and he didn't. He didn't, and I think that's a fail. I think that's a massive fail.
Yeah, he's had a lot of successes with the Mandalorian, no question about it. And my hat's off to him on so many other ways. But I think on this one, I think they might have just missed the boat a little bit. Not everybody agrees with me, but I personally think they did.
Can I just say, I don't mean to take away from Rosario's take on the character either. I flowed into it, and I enjoyed this episode very much, and I accepted her as Ahsoka. But in my heart of hearts, I believe Ashley is Ahsoka. And that's the baggage I carried with me into this episode. I'm a super fan. I've known Ashley personally for 15 years. I've hung out with her socially beyond this show. And she's just one of the most wonderful people I've ever met. And the true epitome of total commitment to a character. And through that character, she developed so much quality fan relationship equity over the years. She was a gift to Lucasfilm and a gift to Star Wars. And I just think that this is something that she, more than deserved, she flat out earned.
Well said, Jimmy. Well said.
All right. I think that it's important, and I like what Jim said. Is there's two different issues here, right? There's the issue of what would it have been like had Ashley been in the role, and then what did Rosario bring to it? And honestly, I'm sitting there with both kids and my wife, and my wife looked over at me and she said, we don't talk a lot of Star Wars shop in the house necessarily. And she said, wow, she is cast perfectly. You couldn't ask for someone better to play this part. So, and that's someone who has, obviously not followed it nearly as close as any of us here on this, in this chat, tonight, but it's somebody who, is more of a casual fan. And that was the thought there. And honestly, again, to echo what Jimmy was saying, I do believe that there's two questions here. There's the what would it have been like with Ashley, and then there's the how did Rosario do? And I thought Rosario did fantastic. I thought she did great, and I thought she looked the part. I love Paul's his illustration here, or that he brought to us at least, of the evolution of the look of the character, I think just speaks very, very well. Now, and the other thing, too, is that Rosario Dawson lobbied, I believe, on social media. She took a page out of the Sam Jackson playbook and lobbied for the role. And
but did she do that?
To that? Or was
did she do
spin,
that before or after? Yeah, I'm starting to feel like
cast.
that was a bunch of spin,
Really, it very well could be. Let's talk a little bit about the big reveal before we go to calls, and we are going to get to your calls, I promise, in just a few minutes. But I want to talk about the reveal at the end with Thrawn, and I bring it up because this was something that was speculated a little bit about at the end of last week's episode, and Jim, you went off on a little bit of a, I don't want to say a rant, but because that's what we do here, is we're here to discuss and talk. But you did mention that, look, you don't need this series to turn into a Rebels sequel. You don't need to see all of these characters thrown in. But you know that Thrawn is largely a fan favorite, particularly very dedicated, loyal fan favorite. And to hear his name dropped at the end of this, what kind of role do you see Grand Admiral Thrawn playing in the future of The Mandalorian? And are you happy
Absolute
about
zero. Absolute zero. I think everything we saw in this episode is planting the seeds for an Ahsoka Tano standalone spin-off series. And should this search for Grand Admiral Thrawn continue, it will happen outside the realm of the Mandalorian series. I think what we're seeing here is, what do you call it, a soft pilot for an episode, when they sneak one by you, like when the Brady Bunch episode turned into the, what do they call the Kenny Kids? Remember that? When it was, whatever. But it's just, I seriously don't think we're going to see the continuation of the hunt for Ezra. And I believe that's the motivation Ahsoka has for hunting Grand Admiral Thrawn, is she knows Thrawn has survived, clearly. What I find interesting is that when dealing with the magistrate, she referred to Thrawn as her master. Her master. And I find that, not superior officer, master. And I thought that was really odd. Like as if Thrawn is training her in some sort of Jedi arts himself. I don't know. We know that Thrawn does study some martial arts. He displayed it in episodes of Rebels. But I just thought master was an odd way to phrase it. And we also know then that the last time we saw Grand Admiral Thrawn in the current canon, he was sucked into hyperspace by the Purgles with Ezra at the end of the Rebels during the series finale. And that's all we know. Going off for destinations unknown at the will of these space whales. Crazy. But apparently Thrawn has... Apparently Thrawn has...
whales here, Captain. That was just for Dan.
Yeah, I knew that. I'm probably the only one who gets that right here. That's a Star Trek fan.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. I love Chekhov. But he always brings a lot of life to the party, that crazy Chekhov. Anton Chekhov.
That wasn't Chekhov. See,
no, it was Scotty. It was freaking.
It was Scotty.
It was Scotty. What? See, Swank was gonna let me. Swank was gonna let me hang out there on the ledge on that one.
I was.
I'm like,
you should have seen. I made this little gesture to Dan, and I was like, "No, let it go." That's what we do here.
Yeah, let it go.
Let
See,
it
that's
go.
what he does. He does. I have such devotion to accuracy that I would have discovered this as soon as we turned these mics off. Wait, did I say Chekhov? No, but I don't care. It's Star Trek. Screw it. We're here to talk about the wars, and that's where the accuracy comes in most important. So it doesn't matter. He could be Chekhov. He could be Spock. He could be Scotty. He could be freaking Ricardo Montalban. I don't care. We're here to talk the wars, and let's focus and get back into it. So I love that. Sebby Vale's here. That's so flippin' funny. But so the Purgles sucked him into hyperspace, and that was where we left with Rebels. Was Ahsoka was going to go out and hunt for Ezra with Sabine, we presume, because they were shown together, leaving together on this quest. And so where's Sabine right now? Obviously, Thrawn has made his presence renowned in the galaxy. He's made it apparent that he survived, and he's out there. And this is a link to him, this magistrate. The magistrate actually did have a name. I don't think they said the name anywhere in the episode, but it was Morgan Elsbeth was the magistrate.
Yes, in the pursuit of accuracy that you are so doggedly chasing. Yes. So I'm not accused later of not correcting you.
What did I say wrong?
Ahsoka does mention her name. She does say Morgan Elsbeth.
Good. All right. Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad. I don't care. But Paul doesn't the actress have a strong connection to one of the all-time martial art greats?
Diana Lee. that's the kind of giveaway, isn't it? That was Bruce Lee was the godfather. So her father was a famous martial artist too, who used to hang out with Bruce, who was his best friend and his sparring partner. It's called Dan. Bit of a legend himself. So, she's got a martial arts connection, and she's a bit of a badass. Yeah, so I was surprised to see her because she's not been in a lot of movies. She's been in stuff steadily over the years and stuff, but it's unusual for her to show up now. She's in her 50s and kick some ass,
I
So
thought
it was
she
great
was
to see her.
quite striking,
Yeah.
and I thought she was a great screen presence, and I love seeing her wield that Beskar spear. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Can I just say I noticed something like a bit while you're talking about Thrawn. Did you guys notice that on the hunter killer droids that Ralph designed, that there was a symbol on the head? And
Wait, rewind. Tell us about the Ralph McQuarrie influence on the design for those HK killer droids. What do you call them? HK assassin droids?
Well,
What are they called?
well, the hunter killers, aren't they? Hunter killers. So the HK droids, but I think they've changed
That's
the
from
number.
EU.
Yeah, but these versions are slightly different from the ones that we've seen before. They're a different number for a start off. So, and they're based on some designs that Ralph did for Empire. So they're cool. But but there's a big symbol slapped on the side of the head, and it's the 7th Fleet symbol, which is Thrawn's fleet. So I mean, as soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, they're going to mention Thrawn. So,
Wow, that's a deep cut.
Cool. I didn't notice that.
That
cool.
is a deep cut right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Paul, we're looking at it
I didn't even know
on the screen so that those listening to the audio podcast know we're looking at the a still from the episode and then the actual symbol that you provided for us. So,
Paul, I had no idea there was a symbol for Thrawn, and also, can you tell us what Ralph created the concept for in Empire? Was it for like an early IG-88 or what was it?
Yeah, one of the bounty hunters. So it was amongst that lot. It's just one of those.
Wow.
So but he was always banging out, droid design. So they're quite similar. A lot of the bodies look very, very similar. Some of the stuff he did for IG-88 has got the same sort of look. But he did a lot of like the one that this is based on. It basically it wore a shawl, a cape. Like Eastwood or something, but I ended up painting that one up at one point for. Remember the McQuarrie Revisited stuff that did for the Insider? There's a bunch of bounty hunters all kind of hanging out inside Vader's castle, and this was one of those. So
no kidding.
Yeah.
So you have actually canonized this in such a way before the Mandalorian. That's amazing, Paul. That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's pretty
just
cool,
another
Paul.
acknowledgement. Just another acknowledgement of your connection to Star Wars and your talent overall. I mean, it's just thrilling when you drop these little tidbits
Ralph's
of
talent,
information on us.
Yeah, we noticed.
Can I
we
show
noticed
you
that
guys-
The viewership jumps up a couple of viewers when Paul starts talking and throwing in as Jim calls them, the deep cuts. It's amazing what happens. Great stuff.
Great deep cuts. Yes. Can I show you guys something I've been fondling all night?
Maybe.
Check this out. This is
friends.
look at this. This is the best thing I got at Star Wars Celebration Chicago. I don't know if that's in focus or not. But it's an actual, this is Dam's Denim memorabilia here. This is a Dan Madsen pin based on his character from Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Dam's Denim, as everyone remembers, was the Kadu handler. And there he is, emblazoned.
I love this. Is this the only official merch of Dam's Denna?
Oh, I don't even think it's official.
Oh, is that not
I think
official?
this is,
I don't think it's not official. It's
so cool.
It's done. It was done for me to give away as gifts, and I'm only a handful of those went out as gifts because I still have a bunch of them. And Jimmy was one of the people that I gave it to. But yeah, that's
Well,
worth
that's
thousands of dollars.
cool. It's sort of like if you meet the president of the United States, they may give you like a lapel pin or a tie bar or something. Dan has these Dam's Denna pins.
Dan, did you get an action figure?
It does.
Yeah,
it does
I'm
need
waiting
an
for
action
my
figure.
action figure.
You know,
Yeah, I'm going
I got
there.
action figure. Dan,
They need to get
come
on
on.
that.
You know people. Where can we get?
It's got to
How
be.
can we get
It
that?
would have to be a 2-pack with the Cadu, the Dam's Dinner.
Yeah,
Cadu
yeah.
Together.
We need that. We need
That
that.
would be cool.
Yes.
Well,
We need that.
whatever. Dan, I cherish this. This is the best thing
That
in
is-
my collection.
That is really, really cool.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I hear, you know what, but one last thought about, and we're going to get to the calls, we promise. We're going to go a little long tonight, guys, because it's such a action-packed episode, action-packed and canon-packed episode. But I want to ask you, what do you think? Now, Jim threw down, and of course, the phrase that everyone is talking about in the chat, and what we're talking about here is, this is a backdoor pilot. That this was, when we talk about what's the future of Ahsoka Tano on this show, I think we can say perhaps very little on this show, as this is perhaps what we saw was indeed a backdoor pilot of an Ahsoka Tano helmed series in the near future. I don't know. We'll see how long it takes to come together. But with Ahsoka and bringing up the Thrawn thing and all of that, what does this have to do with Moff Gideon? Because the last episode we saw was that there was a tracker on the Razor Crest. Moff Gideon was going to be heading to the Mando's next rendezvous, or the next, So could we be building up to any kind of a Moff Gideon v. Thrawn battle, perhaps?
Wow.
We know that we've got these. The thing that came to my mind was how. I believe it was, Shizor was in Shadows of the Empire, was kind of doing this dance with Vader to curry the Emperor's favor. Who could get more ingratiated with the Emperor? Could we be seeing something like that with a Grand Admiral Thrawn and a Moff Gideon, as they're both working very hard to please the Emperor in his cloning efforts, or whatever whatever his agenda is at this time, which we can assume maybe is cloning? Or is this whole Thrawn thing going to be relegated to another series?
That's a great question, Jason. And let me first start off by saying I'm completely blown away by your expanded universe reference of Shadows of the Empire. I'm proud of you too, man. You've come a long way.
Thank you.
You've come a long way, Swank. You really have. God bless you. But
Well done.
again, I have to reiterate, I don't think the Grand Admiral Thrawn thing is going to be anything more than just a little Easter egg that will continue with the Ahsoka Tano standalone series. I fully believe that. I fully believe that. So I don't think it's even worth our while to speculate on that. Do I think Ahsoka Tano's done with the Mandalorian episodes? No, because like you said, Jason, we have Moff Gideon, who is aware of a tracker on the Razor Crest, so obviously he might show up wherever the Mandalorian is. What if he's a day late and ends up visiting Corvus and misses the Mandalorian by just a few hours, but instead encounters Ahsoka Tano? I would not want to be Moff Gideon at that point. And wouldn't it be interesting if a duel did go down between the two of them and Ahsoka ended up walking away with the Darksaber? She certainly understands the significance of that weapon, and for her to walk back to the remaining Mandalorians wielding something like that, considering her past history, she could become the next ruler of Mandalore, when you think about it. But
That's
no,
an interesting
she will.
concept. Yeah.
Yeah. She'll give it to Lady Bo-Katan, though. Because she's virtuous and doesn't get weighed down by physical desires or ego-driven accolades either.
Well,
So
I
Ahsoka
tell you what
would
we're going to
step
do. We
aside.
are going to open up the phone lines right now, 708-866-1737. That is the number to call. So we would appreciate it. We know that everybody thought the episode, for the most part, was awesome.
there's a lot of critics out there online. I'm surprised at the amount of criticism.
welcome those. We
And
welcome
no, I'm
those.
fine with it. I'm fine with that because we're super fans. And like I said, we carry our own baggage into these episodes. And for everyone's favorite Star Wars moments, there are people who consider it to be their least favorite. So I think it's fair that we hear from all aspects of fandom.
Yes, please. So 708-866-1737, that's the number to call. What I wanted to say was, if all you got to say is I love this episode, put it in the chat. We love you. That's great. But we would really like to hear if you have a question for one of our, we've got Dan Madsen. We've got Paul Bateman. So if you got a question for those guys, definitely.
We got Jason Swank for crying out loud.
Please. I was just throwing down a Shadows of the Empire reference.
Oh, man. How rich is
Don't forget Jimmy.
Is. Yeah. Oh, they'll forget about me. They're just waiting for me to drop another F-bomb. That's what they're waiting for. It ain't going to happen.
Not this week.
You're waiting for the FJ one, aren't you?
No, I'm in too good a mood this week.
Well, anyway, so let's get to it. I think we have our first caller here. Let's see. Let's find someone who hasn't called lately. Let's see. We've got area code 573 on the line with us. Hello, 573. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Dan Madsen and Paul Bateman. Hello, 573.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Who do we have?
Hey. Chut.
Oh, Chut.
Chut. Chut to you, my friend. I am
Chut,
so thankful that our first caller, look at this, Jason, you've started a whole thing now. Our very first caller wisely greets us with chut, and that's so thrilling. Hey, what's your name?
I love it.
I didn't catch the name.
Oh, okay, well, I want to talk about, how, okay, so, whenever she said to go to what's it called? Tython. Whenever she said to go to Tython.
Mm-hmm.
I read about Tython, which then it was the first ever Jedi temple that was there, which then they train Jedis in now. So then the only person I think who would be training Jedi would be Luke Skywalker. So maybe Luke will come into this.
All right, that's a great thought. What's your name? I think we talked to you last week,
I think
right?
This is Blake. Is this Blake?
Is this Blake?
Is this little Blake?
Yep. Yes.
Blake, great to hear from you again.
Blake.
Thank you very much for calling, buddy. So this is a big question. So the temple at the top of what was this? This is the temple on Tython. We're gonna. This is what Ahsoka's advice is to place Grogu at the Seeing Stone, and if he communes with the Force, a Jedi might sense him and come searching for him. And she admits that there are very few left. So
I'm picturing
a list here.
I'm picturing the ledge.
I think it's Luke.
That Luke Skywalker stood out on. I'm picturing in my. All right, go ahead, Dan. Please.
No,
you think Luke is going to show up?
I agree with Blake. I think Luke will show up.
Yeah. I agree with both of you guys because that was the first thing I thought of. However, I have been swayed by a lot of online conversation and speculation about Mace Windu. And we have been talking about the return of Mace Windu going back about 7 or 8 years here on this very show, where we always imagine he survived that toss out the window. And, because he was just missing his hands, he could have very much cushioned his fall with the Force. And then gone into exile with the rise of the Empire. But we also imagine that a Mace Windu without his hands in exile is he's a little batty at this point. So you got crazy Mace. And he's got like birds living in his hair. He's got a big one of those big Saw Gerrera fros. And he's got birds living up in that head. And but he's still strong in the Force. So you don't want to mess with him. And I think that the possibility of a Mace Windu survival is great, but like everyone else, like Blake, like Dan, I believe Luke Skywalker. We're setting the table for Luke Skywalker, and I pictured her talking about placing him on the stone and everything to be very much like the first Jedi temple on Ahch-To, where there was that meditation balcony and Rey sat on the rock and yada, yada, yada. I'm picturing something very similar in my head with the Mando placing Baby Yoda on a very similar thing. But, and he reaches out with the Force. So who else would be out there? What other Jedi could be out there? Well, Luke Skywalker obviously is top of the list. Top of the list. And you know that Yoda has given Luke Skywalker the directive. Pass on what you've learned. Pass on what you, that was what he said to him with his dying breath. Pass on what you've learned. I think we're going to see Luke Skywalker. I really do. Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Luke Skywalker in a live-action Star Wars TV series. Paul, I got to get you to weigh in here. Is this possible? Because I know you have been talking for a while about Stan. Forgive me, I don't know his name. Stan something as being a young Luke Skywalker. You were calling this back at the time of as we were
Sebastian Stan.
Sebastian Stan. Yeah. Thank you. During the buildup of the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I completely flipped out as soon as I heard Tython, because obviously it's something that's a deep cut when it comes to the EU, and it first turned up in Darth Bane Rule 2. So, it has a lot of fans, and then it's appeared in all kinds of comics, and it has, it's such a big deal in the EU in terms of it being the birthplace of the Jedi. The fact that the light side and the dark side are named after its two moons, Ashlar and Bogan, all that kind of stuff. So it's got all kinds of stuff going on. But what's interesting to me as well was that I've been hearing for a long time that there's a race called the Rakata that turned up in a lot of scenes involving Tython that I'd heard maybe showing up, but it was just a kind of vague rumor, and I didn't really hold much credence to it. But now Tython's a part of all this. It makes me think that maybe there's something to it, because they were a big deal on Tython for generations. So I'm suspecting that these characters from the EU, the Rakata, are probably going to turn up. They're very distinctive looking, and but we've never seen them in a live action movie before, and I don't think they've even been in the animated shows either. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think it's possible that Luke could show up. Although I think it's such a big deal that maybe they'd be confronting the same problem that they apparently had with the sequel trilogy. In the, isn't he going to kind of overshadow everybody, if he shows up? But I think it would be nice to have at least just a moment, where there's Luke and he's taking the baby away. I mean, that is something that I could kind of see everybody feeling comfortable and happy about. Whereas if you just hand Baby Yoda over to somebody that we don't trust and think is somebody special. Boy. That could be a bit of a worry. I mean, like Jimmy's devotion to Baby Yoda. None of us want to see anything horrible happen to him, and it seems like a lovely finale for that character that Luke in his prime could show up eventually and take him off his hands, and Baby Yoda might know him, or remember him. So I think that's a nice.
I think that would be an emotional.
Look.
That would be an emotional moment too, to see Luke taking. I'm going to still call him Baby Yoda. Taking Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
Baby Yoda.
It's a trick, isn't it?
Well, okay. I want to throw this in here, guys, because Ahsoka is a product of a different era of Jedi thought, a Jedi doctrine. This idea of attachment. She is basically saying that the child, Baby Yoda, Grogu, whatever pick your flavor, cannot be trained because of his attachment to his father figure, the Mandalorian. Now, we don't really know how that doctrine changes under the Skywalker, in the Skywalker era, as the new Jedi Order starts to take place before Ben Solo tears it down, burns it down. But the question is the Luke Skywalker doctrine the same as the old doctrine? I mean, Luke Skywalker in some ways is catapulted to his place, with his destiny because of his attachment to his father, despite all of the reasons to not be attached to him. So the question is, would a Luke Skywalker look at Grogu and say, no, the boy cannot be trained because he's attached to his father? So I think that we could be looking at two different doctrines. Yeah, Jim?
That's a great question. That's just a great question. I think a Luke would react very differently because, of course, he had heard Yoda say the same thing about him. And look at the accomplishments Luke Skywalker was able to achieve. I mean, my goodness. He was able to do what he set out to do. He brought his father back from the dark side. And as a result of doing so, the dominoes fell in such a way that the Empire was completely destroyed. And that's all due to the fact that Luke had an attachment to his father. So I think we're dealing with an Ahsoka Tano who's her perception of the way that the Force should be approached is based on her personal experience. And in her personal experience, she saw Anakin Skywalker fall to the dark side. And I believe Ahsoka Tano had enough insight and was close enough to the situation to realize that it was the attachment to Padme that pushed Anakin across the line. That's why he crossed the line. So I think the old Jedi edict of no attachments was only reinforced to Ahsoka via her own personal experience, via her own observations of what happens when a powerful Jedi does become attached to someone else.
What a chilling moment that was when she says, I've seen what such feelings can do to a fully trained Jedi. To the best of us, she says, to the best of us, which I love that. And I'm actually getting goosebumps talking about it because you can feel the dedication, the loyalty that she still has after all these years to Anakin Skywalker, referring to Anakin Skywalker, who at this point she now knows turned into the more machine now than man, Darth Vader. She still says he was the best of us. That's just that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Here's a thought. A bit of a wild card here, but I remember the other week you guys were talking about the mythological and kind of Buddhist aspects of a number of characters, and including Baby Yoda. And there was a line in it where Mando says, "Oh, I just keep him around for look," which made me think of lucky Buddhas. Like the idea that people kind of keep a Buddha in a pocket. So I thought, could that be like a weird veiled reference that maybe he's all that, and maybe Anakin wouldn't know about him because they're keeping him from him. They don't want Anakin to know about him because maybe they're getting a whiff of the dark side and think, we don't really want everybody knowing about this kid.
A whiff of the dark side from who, Paul? Paul, a whiff of the dark side from who? From Anakin or from Baby Yoda?
Well, from Anakin, or at least like Mace clearly thought there were issues to do with Anakin and was a bit concerned about his connection to Palpatine. So it wouldn't surprise me if they thought Baby Yoda was all that, that they'd be thinking maybe we keep him away from everybody till we figure out this situation, But I don't know. But of course, the other possibilities in. Sorry.
Go ahead. What the other possibility is? What I'm hanging on every word you say, Paul.
We were talking about characters that could come back. And you're talking about Luke and how tantalizing that idea is of Luke meeting Ahsoka on camera. My immediate kind of go-to was, well, what about all the other characters that are either masked or CG? So I was immediately thinking, could it be something to do with Jar Jar? Could it be something to do with R2? The squirrel them away. But then I'm also thinking about kind of down the line with Master Luke and whatever. Could Ghost Yoda be turning up again?
Yes,
Spirit Yoda.
Yes, I thought about that too.
Wouldn't it be cool to see Yoda interacting with Gogun?
With Baby Yoda, a ghost Yoda interacting with Baby Yoda.
He could stand over him and be like those. He could stand over him and be like those Russian dolls, couldn't he? Little Yoda inside a big Yoda.
Yeah,
I was thinking of Muppets from Space, where Gonzo finally realizes what he really is after all those years. Incredible.
Wait. Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Are we going to see Baby Yoda actually speak some English by the end of this season?
Wow.
Speak
What would you like to hear him say? Dan, what would you like to hear him say? If you could write one sentence of dialogue for Baby Yoda in English, what would he say?
Oh, God. Not that.
That's good enough. That's great. I love it. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God.
All right. Hey, let's check.
Mighty, I'm tiny, but I'm mighty.
Tiny
check
but
in with-
mighty, and he flexes.
Yeah.
We're going to check in with area code 706 calling in tonight. Hello, 706. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Dan Madsen and Paul Bateman. Hello.
Hey guys, this is Cam from South Carolina, and I'm a long-time listener of the show, so I'm really excited to be on. So my question is, it seemed like they were pointing towards Grogu, aka Sweet Baby Yoda, possibly going a different path than the Jedi. So do you think Grogu might become a Mandalorian, a Jedi, or a combination of both?
Well, my son is really hoping that he becomes a Mandalorian because then we'll finally get armor in his size. He'll be very excited about that. I love the idea of a Grogu. Yeah, I love the idea of a Grogu in Mandalorian armor. It's a fair question. Where is this child's destiny?
Yeah, I mean, I could just see the Mandalorian helmet with the ears coming out the side, and maybe he might even become a bounty hunter himself, and take down people with lightsabers. But it'd be pretty cool if they had a combination of both.
He's a
badass little dude.
Thanks a lot,
innocent. Cam. He's a pretty pure, innocent little guy. I don't want to see him Boba Fetting out on us,
Well,
I really like him just being who he is.
Aside from that, guys, there's a lot of thought out there that Grogu could be scratching at the door of the dark side. Is there? Do any of you feel that there is a possibility of this? Are they laying the groundwork for? They're throwing down the. Things like attachment, all of this that we know can lead to a very difficult time for a Jedi or for anyone. Are we looking at a potential dark side turn for Grogu?
Absolutely, 100%. It's something I wish that happened to Rey in episode 8. I really wanted to see her start to embrace the dark side and fall down that path and then eventually redeem herself. But Baby Yoda, we get into some really twisted categories here with that because he's just so cute and pure and innocent. Just how could it be possible that in his state of life, in his, the moment he's living his life, that this sweet, look at that face. How could this guy do anything? How could this guy do anything wrong to anyone? Now, we did see an early example of Baby Yoda falling prey to his emotions and quite possibly tapping into the dark side. We've already seen this. We saw it in season 1. I believe it was episode 7, chapter 7, when Cara and the Mando were having their arm wrestling match. And Baby Yoda thought, because of the way that the Mando was struggling and physically exerting himself and possibly losing, that, Baby Yoda stepped in. And what did he do? He started to force choke Cara Dune. And we all know the force choke is an act of a dark force wielder, a dark side wielder. And that's already right there is an example of how Baby Yoda's attachment to the Mando and his emotions can carry him into a place where he's going to use the Force in a dark way. So we've already seen it. The seeds have already been planted. Ahsoka's merely just confirming things. There's affirmation coming from Ahsoka that there is dark side potential in sweet Baby Yoda.
I think I've always had taken kind of issue with this this lack of attachment thing. I've always thought it was a very Methodist idea of what Buddhism means by, that need to not feel attached. I think, the way that it's portrayed in the prequel era is literally like don't have any attachments, whereas, the more kind of Buddhist perspective of that is attachment is fine, but you just don't lose your mind when that attachment, dissipates. It's all part of the thing. But for me, the way the prequels kind of portrayed it was like no attachment is the way, which in Buddhism is definitely not the way. So I look at this and kind of go, I almost feel like part of Anakin's problem was the fact that he didn't have enough attachment. The fact that his mother died and Qui-Gon wasn't around, and so in lots of ways you could argue that part of the reason he kind of fell apart was that it just wasn't there for him.
Boy, I'm with you, Paul.
Whereas with Baby Yoda, you feel like he needs Mando, and if he's not there, then maybe that's what would turn him to the dark side.
That's exactly.
For
right.
those, a lot of people are pointing out in the live chat, if I can, for just a second, a lot of people are pointing out in the live chat, Luke force choked the guard at Jabba's palace. But I will argue with you. You are still dealing with a Luke Skywalker who's coming to terms with his force power and his natural pull toward the dark side himself. I mean, this is the son of Anakin Skywalker. He had a natural pull toward the dark side. And Luke exhibited that pull to the dark side later in Return of the Jedi when he almost killed his own father. He chopped his own father's hand off and was about ready to strike the killing blow. But then he stopped himself just short. And so Luke has always been tempted by the dark side. We know this. So by saying that Luke force choked the guard at Jabba's palace doesn't minimize the fact that it isn't a dark side act to begin with.
Don't you think that part of it as well is that one of the most beautiful things about the original trilogy, and I'm saying this just purely because it's the clearest, example of it. Is that the whole yin yang?
It's the best Star Wars. Damn it, Paul, say it. And I know Dan Manson's going to back me up on this.
I say
it's the best Star Wars that has ever been and it will ever be. It's the original trilogy.
Amen,
call me a nostalgic old man. I don't care.
All right. Well, the whole thing for me is that it is definitely all about the yin yang, and there is dark in the light and light in the dark for everybody. And to spell it out as this is a light side and this is a dark side, or is a simplification of that as a concept. And one of the lovely things about Return of the Jedi is that idea that, Luke has the darkness in him, but Vader also has the light in him, and it's a possibility for all of them. And so it's no surprise that it's a possibility for Grogu, because it's a possibility for every single Jedi, every one of them. We can be our greater selves or we can be our worst selves, but it can switch back and forth. That's the whole idea. But
well, there's a very good comment in here about Ahsoka in the live chat about the fact that she was really on a killing spree. We see that in this episode, but I want to talk to we got area code 201. I believe this might be New Jersey. Is this Dave on the line with us? Hello, Dave.
John, how you guys doing?
John, all right, great to have you with us. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Great to be on with you guys and Dan and Paul. You guys already touched on a couple of things I want to talk about, actually. I called for Chapter 9 because I kind of got a sense that Baby Yoda they were kind of positioning that kind of dark side potential in him, and Ahsoka kind of touched on that, like you guys were saying. But I wanted to ask you specifically about Ahsoka. It's not a comment on Ashley or Rosario and that kind of debate. I just think Ahsoka, especially the animated version, was such an emotionally driven character. You could really sense like her empathy and like her following her heart. And I just didn't get that from the live action version. I thought she seemed kind of stoic, kind of distant. And it was kind of a surprise to me that she just would throw her hands up and say, well, I can't train Baby Yoda because he has one attachment to the Mando. I mean, she had a ton of attachments. She was very attached to Anakin. She was attached to Obi-Wan, and she found attachments, throughout the galaxy in the Clone Wars. Like I said, just being such an emotionally driven character. It just came as a shock to me. I mean, she didn't turn to the dark side, even though she had many attachments, obviously, except on Mortis. Did you guys kind of get that vibe from Ahsoka?
The difference is, I think the big difference is Ahsoka certainly had relationships, but she senses the fact that Baby Yoda considers the Mando his father, a father figure. So that takes it up a notch, you know? I mean, sure, Ahsoka has been around the galaxy and has met a lot of people and made an impact on their lives, and they've made an impact on her lives, but did she consider any of them to be a parent for her? Did she consider Anakin to be her father? There was maybe a brother-sister thing going on there, but even then, Ahsoka showed that she had no problem walking away from the Jedi Order, walking away from Anakin Skywalker. So her level of attachment probably wasn't as solid as we think it might have been. Consider that.
I was gonna agree with Caller, but then now after I hear what you just said, Jimmy Mack, I think there might be some truth in that.
She showed zero reservations walking away from the only life she ever knew. She was pampered. Everything she ever wanted was provided for her, a roof over her head, food to eat, people to support her, and an education to acquire. And it was all there for her in the biggest planet of the universe at Coruscant, which is, downtown Star Wars. And
downtown Star Wars. I love it.
And she just walked away.
Don't you think that was because of the betrayal that she felt? I mean, if anything, that's like that was a pivotal moment for her. She could have, gotten angry and, went down a dark path, but she chose to kind of separate herself from that. I'm not, I guess from my standpoint, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, but she didn't, it didn't take away from the attachment and the feeling she had for Anakin. It was just, that's how she chose to deal with that betrayal.
I don't know. She was kind of cold to him in season 7 of the Clone Wars. Don't you agree? Wasn't she kind of cold to Anakin?
Yeah.
In the interactions that they had in season 7 of the Clone Wars? I think she was over. I think she was over all of it by the time we caught up with her in season 7. So
I think hasn't it been like 15 years? I don't know if her level of attachment
was quite what we thought it was. What's that, Paul?
Hasn't it been like 15 years anyway? So since we've seen her, so I mean, you'd expect it to be
by this point,
different.
Yeah, by this point.
So, I mean, I kind of expected it because we've got like the OT going on and everything, and Ahsoka's off doing, who knows what, and then there's another 5 years on top of that. So, I mean, who knows how her character has changed over that time and what's happened to her,
It's like catching up with someone. It's like catching up with someone from high school at age 32. I mean, so much changes in people's lives from the time they're 18.
Thanks, John, for calling. Appreciate it very much. Another topic I want to throw out here, and we've sort of danced on the edges of it, and that is this whole question about, can the boy be trained? We know that the new Jedi Order it ushered in, perhaps we can assume, maybe even a more Qui-Gon-esque view of the Force versus the a view of the living Force versus that more stringent doctrine. Where is this going as far as Baby Yoda is concerned? There's certainly no going back in terms of his attachment to the character of the Mandalorian. It's intrinsic to the very plot of the series. I don't think that you can really have Mando without Baby Yoda, Grogu, any more than you have Grogu without Mandalorian. At this point, they are just intrinsically linked. How can they? Have they gotten themselves into have they painted themselves into a corner, I guess is the question, in a sense that the child cannot be trained because of the effect of the imprinting of the Mandalorian as a father figure to the child versus the Mandalorian's he's been quested by his order to return this being to its own kind. So you've got this. This is a very. This is a huge moment in this series where you've got the divergence of the Mando's mandate versus what the only established Jedi we have in this particular place of the Star Wars universe is saying can happen. Where do we go from here?
I have a what if.
Maybe Grogu can't be trained, and Grogu's just going to become Mando's sidekick, and we'll have him for the rest of the series. The two of them
kind of
side
thinking
by
along
side.
that way. I'm kind of thinking along those lines, Dan, but in sort of a inside-out kind of way. You put Grogu, Baby Yoda, on the rock at the temple or whatever. What do they call it? What do they refer to where he's supposed
rock,
to set him? The seeing stone
rock,
or the seeing
stone at
so you put him down on the rock and
Typhon.
On Typhon. But by the way, Typhon has already been revealed in the Dr. Aphra Marvel comic series, issue number 40. Which is the final issue of the initial run of Dr. Aphra. She baits Darth Vader to Typhon in the belief that there is a rebel base there. And this happens in between the A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So we've seen Typhon before in loose canon Marvel Comics, Star Wars. And it's just another snow planet.
Games as well.
So
it's in lots of games and stuff.
Oh, has it been in games?
Yeah, I mean, it's been it's all over the place.
I guess I know, Paul. I know I've seen it over the years, but the most recent look at Typhon has come through that Dr. Aphra comic series.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What if? Now here I'll do that dramatic recreation again. What if Mando takes Baby Yoda and places him on the seeing stone? Okay. And he's there, and he's reaching out with the Force. And he makes a connection with the Jedi Master, who appears to them. He shows up. He comes there, and he not only senses Force potential in Baby Yoda, which we all know is there, but he senses the Force in the Mandalorian himself. Think about it. The Mandalorian's been quite blessed in the season and a half we've been with him. And it seems like if his name was Ray, we'd be calling him a Mary Jane or a Mary, what do we call him? My mind's always on the Mary Jane. I meant Mary Sue. And so he's a Mary Sue. But the Mando is extremely lucky, extremely accurate, and he has great foresight. He always knows how to get out of these problems. What if there is latent Force ability rumbling underneath the Mando, and the Jedi comes and finds Baby Yoda and says, sure, I'll train Baby Yoda, and I'm going to train your ass as well. Mando's like, what?
You know when people say like, "Oh, the Mandalorian," they knock him for maybe not being as kind of as tough as the other Mandos, or somehow falling short in fights and things like that. I feel like the Mando is slowly becoming like Indiana Jones in the Indiana Jones Chronicles. The way he was the everyman, the guy that just happened to be there during all the major events. And I could see the Mando kind of becoming that. He's like this Indiana Jones that gets into fights, and half the time he gets kicked to the curb. That's part of his charm, is the fact he gets beaten up and thrown in the sea, or he doesn't always come out on top, and he quite often gets one in the jaw. So for me, I almost feel like the Mando is this faceless kind of everybody that could be any one of us, and therefore it makes him kind of easy to identify with, because he's not ridiculously empowered. He's just kind of, he's tough and strong and all that, but he has weaknesses. So I kind of feel like he's just this character that's almost our introduction, our doorway, but it's not really necessarily what things are about. And I think that works as a device. It certainly worked for me, and I know Indiana Jones Chronicles isn't well regarded, but for me, I thought it was a clever device for kind of showing you about history. And in a way, the Mando could be this device to show us about all aspects of Star Wars,
Well, this show, or in this particular episode, it has combined everything. It has combined, maybe with the exception of Resistance, because that takes place later, but it has combined the animated properties. It has combined the sequel trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and in some cases, dare I say, even the sequel trilogy in this one episode. So that is what is happening with The Mandalorian, is it is cementing all of this as a single canon. I noticed, Dan, you're nodding your head. Do you also see this cementing of all of this as one story?
I do. I see it. And this is about as Star Wars of an episode as you could get. I thought they really started tying all the ends together in this. And there's no question that that's where it's leading. And I think whoever, obviously Filoni has been trained well by Lucas, because he knows how to put these ends all together and bring them into one continuous story. And so I was impressed with that part of this episode. I really was. And and as far as you were saying, it has elements of all of it. Some of those battle scenes with Ahsoka, it almost felt like I was watching the Clone Wars at some point. Of her jumping and twirling, with her double lightsabers.
It's funny.
It almost felt like at points it was an animated episode.
Mm-hmm. It did, and I have found myself thinking that a couple of times in this season. It's like, wow, how amazing was, and we take for granted now, but how amazing was the technological aspects of those animated series, to where now they almost seamlessly blend into a live action series. It's quite astounding. I really believe. Let's take a couple more calls here. I think we've got. Let's see. Is this Danny? Area code 707. You're on with Rebel Force Radio. Dan Madsen and Paul Bateman. Hello.
And Jason Swank.
Hey everybody, how you doing tonight?
Good.
Hey Danny.
Great to hear from you. I'm listening out from sunny California.
Very
man,
nice.
What a show. I want to talk about Ahsoka. And, man, the feelings I got when Ahsoka first mentions fear and anger in Baby Yoda, right through me went episode, or the final series finale of Clone Wars, where you see Darth Vader hold up her lightsaber and look into the sky, and the owl is in the air. And then flushing through my eyes was Rebels, when she cuts Darth Vader's mask and sees his eye and realizes, what has this become? My question to you is that, does she really feel all those things when that's happening with Baby Yoda or Grogu? And does she even know that Anakin is the chosen one and is Anakin again and has killed the Emperor and is now a Force ghost? And we don't think that Force ghost has shown up to her, but does she know that things have changed with Anakin?
Boy,
good question.
That is a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. There were a couple of times, fellas, where I had to remind myself, wait a minute, where are we? Okay, we're 5 years post Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
with Ahsoka and her relationship to Anakin / Vader, etc. Question is, and I think Dan lays it out here, is there an understanding in terms of Ahsoka as to where the galaxy is, what role Anakin / Vader has just played into it, what role the Jedi have played into it, or is she like, one of these poor soldiers you hear about that still think that World War II is raging on in in the 1960s because they find them in some bunker somewhere? Is that where Ahsoka is in terms of her, relationship with?
I think she's a little more on top of things because she realizes Grand Admiral Thrawn is still out there and knows where to find the connection to him and all of that. So I think she's a little more on top of things. What does our caller think? What does Dan think? Our caller, what do you agree, right?
Dan's gone. He's gone.
What does Dan
Sorry
Madsen
to say,
think?
he's gone. What does Dan Madsen
No, I
think?
agree with Jimmy. I think she's more up on things than that, and the fact that I would agree with what Jimmy said.
I don't remember what I said.
Well, that she's tuned in. She's watching the HoloNet. She's watching HNN.
Right. No, she knows. She knows. She
I mean,
knows.
there's known about
knows.
this stuff. I mean, your friends can say, somebody can say, Luke said that he actually saw Anakin just kind of like a blue ghosty on Endor, and she'd be like, well, I haven't seen one of these blue ghosty things. And the liquor was kind of going pretty wild there on Endor on that day. So I'm not really sure there's any truth in that.
Well, it's good for all my friends.
This is an interesting question. You would assume that when we see Luke Skywalker receive the audio impression of old Ben, that he's receptive to it. He's grieving the loss of Ben. He's receptive to it. When he sees the visual image of Ben in Empire Strikes Back, he's receptive to it, etc. Would a Force ghost be able to, I hate to use this word, impede upon someone? Would a ghost of Anakin be able to show up in Ahsoka's consciousness and say, "Hey there, it's been a long time, but
That's hard to
got
say.
some catching up to do."
More to the point, like if you've got a mate who turns into a blue ghosty, I mean, you'd never be able to go to Lou again in the same way, would you?
Yeah, right.
Please don't turn up.
Or show up in the darndest places. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Or go on with your life in any way, shape, or form if you got. But I mean, I think the ability to connect with the afterlife comes through a long period of training. The reasons why Luke was able to connect with the spirits probably had more to do with his connection to his blood connection to the chosen one itself. But for Obi-Wan, Yoda, Qui-Gon, even Qui-Gon had to go through some serious self-training prior to his death to be able to achieve the level of Jedi Master who can communicate from the beyond. And Qui-Gon was the very first to do that. Yoda heard Qui-Gon's voice from the beyond in episode 2, and he was like, what is that? What the hell is going on? It wasn't an average regular thing for a Jedi to die and then reappear as a Force ghost. I think it depended on the living. And that's what I think Qui-Gon Jinn is talking about, when the connection to the living Force. And the Jedi who has achieved ultimate connection with the living Force can communicate with the beyond. And that's a very difficult discipline for a Jedi to master, and very few have been able to. I don't think Ahsoka has achieved that level of Jedi, that level of connection to the Force even. Because it's arguable whether or not Ahsoka can be considered a Jedi at this point in her life. But her connection to the Force, you really can't put a label on it. So
what confuses me about this is, I thought you could go in 2 days from not knowing about the Force to lifting mountains, and she says to wield it takes a great deal of discipline and training. Did anybody tell JJ and Ryan that was the case? Right? To wield it takes a great deal of discipline and training. No, it doesn't. It takes 2 days on a hill.
Well,
that's it.
It's a fair question. I do have to say that if we look at settings,
I have an answer for that. I do. I have a response to what Paul just said.
Go for
Apologies.
it.
Is that the way the Force has evolved by the time we reach the sequel trilogy is it's at a point where it's becoming more accessible to the everyman, where it's growing in stature. Come on. Give me a second here, all right? Give me a second.
You're making it up as you go along. Lucasfilm set you a really bad example.
I've always done that. No, and I'm not making apologies. And the last thing I'm going to do is try to cover Lucasfilm's ass. Okay, I have no interest in doing that. Okay, but in my assessment, and I've always felt this way, is that when they say in the sequels, in Episode 7, there's been an awakening. That means that the balance of the Force is tipped to the light in such a way that it's becoming more and more accessible to the everyman throughout the entire galaxy. And Rey is just she is just the focus of that entire phenomenon that's happening, where
I think that
the forces become imbalanced so much that it's
you don't think it was already pretty available?
Accessible.
I mean, it was already pretty available because, I mean, we had thousands of Jedi during the prequel era. It was available.
Well, that's because they went under training. That's because they were trained. There was always the threat of the Sith in the background. The Sith go back a full 1,000 years in the background. And so the Force, even in the prime of the Jedi, the Force was still tipped out of balance to a degree, because there were Sith masters behind the scenes working with the rule of two to corrupt the balance of the Force. Those Sith masters don't exist. Well, I guess they do now. I have to change my entire assessment of the sequel trilogy based on Episode 9 bringing Palpatine back, because Palpatine is pure Sith as far as we know. So, I mean, I'm still trying to negotiate my way through all that and connect.
I think you're really creative, Jimmy, when it comes to stuff like this, and you always make a sensible explanation. You know, you figure it out, but I think 99% of the time you put more thought into it than Lucasfilm actually did, and I think you're very creative and very inventive. And I think most of the time, I think they don't see it that way. I mean, I remember talking to you and the boys online, just before the sequels came out and stuff, and we were debating all kinds of stuff, and we put so much thought into what might happen, and we weren't locked into this is how it should be or anything, but we were giving it so much thought. And then you look at what was going to deliver it and you think, how do you feel, just a wild card question to everybody here, just from me, how do you feel about them kind of leaning into the sequel trilogy in The Mandalorian? I personally would prefer they just avoided that era altogether. Although, you know, the way that they've kind of helped patch up the prequel era a little bit for a lot of people, you know, you would think that maybe that was a good idea to try and do that kind of thing with the sequels. But I'd prefer it if they just didn't touch that. You know, I feel like it would diminish this because it's so perfect.
Well, no,
but
I find it interesting you say that, because I've heard you say several times, Paul, in the past that you were reluctant to open up your heart to anything having to do with the prequel trilogy until we started to all get into the Clone Wars together.
Yeah,
and
that's true, but I think this is different. The dots
that way.
I think this is very different.
I do.
I think the world building is better in the prequels. There's no doubt about it. And it's George's idea, so I mean, you know, the question that's occurring to me more and more these days is: should Disney get between the audience and George Lucas's idea? Because I look at this and kind of go, if Tolkien had only ever written The Hobbit, and then Disney bought the rights to Middle Earth and said, "I'm sorry, we don't like Lord of the Rings. We're going to write our own thing." Would that be okay? Because I feel like I'm not comparing whatever George has in his mind to Lord of the Rings, but for an example, you know, we have this guy who created this hugely, you know, influential and special kind of universe, and now we have a company that's saying, no, George's idea wasn't good enough. You're gonna have this as a sequel trilogy, and you're gonna like it. And I feel that they've bought it, and that's fair and square. You know, and I understand business is business, but at the same time, I think it's wrong while George is with us and he's in his late 70s to deny us whatever he had in mind. I think we should get access to his ideas, regardless of what Disney wants to do creatively, because I think if he, God forbid, he ever, you know, passes away and we never get to find that stuff out, I think that would be an enormous loss. I want to know exactly what he had in mind for the trilogy.
Well, it seems like
Paul, I agree with you.
And I think they should release his sequel trilogy treatment, because they've been referring to it via interviews, via stuff on Blu-ray extras and other things. They in books. There's been a couple of books recently coming out referencing George Lucas's sequel trilogy. Quit tap dancing around it and give us that sequel trilogy treatment. What are you afraid of? If you're going to keep referencing it, if you're going to keep trying to keep it alive somehow, then release the damn thing so we can see it.
I appreciate there are lots of people out there who love the sequel trilogy, and good for them. You know, if they're happy, I'm happy for them. And the Star Wars does need to reach a younger audience and all that. So whatever they can do to make that happen, I'm all for. But I just think, You know, if we're not careful, we're not going to find out. You know, we're not going to know this story because they're going to tie George up in legal red tape and say to him, no, that's not getting out there. So, you know,
leak.
and I think that
it will leak. Will leak sooner or later. It will be an orchestrated release that, you know, it will be completely.
Maybe that's the subject for fanboys too. We all go and raid George's house and get the scripts. What do you reckon?
I mean, my God, we're in a place where we can reference Colin Trevorrow's rejected Episode 9 script, but we can't go anywhere near George Lucas's rejected sequel trilogy treatment. I mean, just give us the damn treatment. Let us know what it said.
Hey, let's grab just a couple of more calls here before we wrap this up. What a great conversation this has been. Let's see. We've
loving
got
the comments in the chat too. I've been looking the whole night. You guys are cracking.
Thank you so much for hanging with us. We got area code 316 joining us. I believe it's Keegan. Hello, Keegan.
Hey guys, how's it going?
All right. Welcome to Rebel Force Radio.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. First time calling. Yeah, I had a theory I just wanted to run by you guys. So I was thinking towards the end of this season, you know, Gideon's still got that tracker on the Razor Crest, and he's going to show up sooner or later. I'm thinking that, you know, maybe at Typhon, is that what it's called? At Typhon, he might show up while they're waiting for some Jedi, just kidnap Grogu, and then Mando kind of has to get, you know, season 2's crew, Cobb Vanth, Ahsoka, you know, Kara, probably not Greek Karga since he's just chilling, but, you know, grab a new crew and then kind of go rescue him and have that whole interaction with the Dark Troopers and all that stuff. What do you guys think?
Well, thanks, man. It's a great question, Keegan. We've got what we had at the end of the last episode was quite a build-up. We had the Dark Troopers. We had Karga that was closing in on Mando. He was going to get him at I would assume at the next rendezvous point. He doesn't show up there on Corvus. Is the setting for the big showdown Tython? Is that possible?
Could be. That could be.
And if that's the case, does it open the door for whoever this teacher that's going to emerge from the shadows to perhaps take Grogu under his wing? Yeah, Paul?
How about this? I think maybe this is just my having enjoyed Rosario's take on Ahsoka tremendously, even though I loved Ashley's take on Ahsoka, obviously, because she is Ahsoka. It's left me feeling, okay, well, if this is what they can do with, you know, taking animated characters and bringing them into live action, who else can come over? And I was immediately kind of went to a bunch of characters and having seen that Maul could come back, you know, without legs and cut in half and all that, I kind of feel like anything's possible no matter what happens to any of the live action characters or animated characters. So I immediately went like, could we be seeing Asajj Ventress or Quinlan Vos? Because they're both Force wielders,
you know,
and they're interesting characters and well loved.
It's funny, Paul, that you mentioned that, because as my wife, we were watching it and she said something about this. She said, well, what Jedi are out there? And I said, well, I think Asajj Ventress could be out there. Darth Maul's dead. Maybe we got a Quinlan Vos out there. You don't know, but you're absolutely right in the sense that these are characters that you know, seem to kind of come and go as it becomes.
I mean, the characters are dead till they're not in Star Wars, aren't they? I mean, they're dead till they're not. I mean, Maul, you can't get much deader than getting cut off and thrown down a hole.
All right, let's just go around. Let's go around the round table real quick. If the moment was to happen on Tython where Grogu was put on the Seeing Rock, communes with the Force. This is almost like Groundhog Day. Does the groundhog see a shadow? Does Grogu commune with the Force on the Seeing Rock? And what Jedi shows up? Dan Madsen, what say you? What Jedi shows up? You got 10 seconds.
Luke Skywalker, as I said earlier.
Luke Skywalker shows up. Jimmy Mack, who shows up for Grogu?
When you put Grogu on the rock, Luke Skywalker shows up.
Luke Skywalker shows up.
I
Paul
love
Bateman.
the idea of Mace, but Luke.
Luke. All right, Paul. Who shows up on the rock?
Who was the guy that looked like a turtle in Clone Wars? Do you remember with the one-off that had all the kids in it?
He looked like a turtle.
Yeah, like kind of in facially.
Mitch McConnell?
He walked with a stick. He had a beak. Do you remember?
He had a beak.
Kind of.
Yeah,
kind of beaky
he's
looking.
talking about that from Lightsaber Lost.
Yeah, the
one
that was
yes. Remember that episode when Ahsoka?
I love that episode. That's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Anyway,
someone in the chat will throw this at us.
Let's see if they can find it before I Google it. Lightsaber Lost.
Tara Sinube. Mariana's got it. We love Mariana.
There we go.
Tara Sinube. Thank you. Ezra Bridger. All right, so Tara Sinube. Paul, that's who you think is going to show up on the Seeing Rock at
Well, I just think they're going to... He's probably going to want to bring more characters to life, so maybe.
Nah.
Everyone's
Wrong.
saying Luke Skywalker.
It's going to be a big character that everyone knows.
I'm going to say it's not Luke Skywalker. I think it's going to be Mace Windu. I think that where there's smoke, there's fire. I think I'm not saying that I'm not cheering for it. I'm saying that if anybody can come bring his character from the dead, it's Samuel L. Jackson.
And he's someone who has publicly lobbied to bring back his character.
Yep.
And if Rosario Dawson can publicly lobby to strip the title of Ahsoka Tano away from Ashley Eckstein, then Samuel L. Jackson will be the badass mofo who's going to slide right back into those Jedi robes. But I still want to have him, with birdies living in his hair.
All right, one more.
I love the image.
Here's who I want it to be: Kyle Katarn.
And other people are bringing up Cal Kestis from the Jedi Fallen Order series. Cal Kestis. Who,
and I'm gonna say that it's gonna be Who Cares This. Who shows up from your
it'll be Luke Skywalker
expanded universe.
There's got to be somebody bigger.
It's got to be someone huge.
Dan. Thank you.
Yes.
No, it's not going to be Who Cares This. What's his name is showing up from expanded universes.
Are they going to bring back I'm Gonna Die? Are they going to bring him back?
I'm gonna
no, because he done it died.
All right. So, last caller of the week here. We've got Eric from Phoenix. Eric, come on. Bring us something we haven't talked about, my friend.
Some people are saying Ezra, too. Some people are
Ezra.
saying Ezra. But I say no. No.
Not fun.
No.
Eric from Phoenix, what say you?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. First, real quick, I just want to say a huge thank you to Dan Madsen, my wife and I, and technically my oldest son. She was 3 months pregnant with him. We had the chance to attend Celebration 1, and thank you for having that. Thank you for not canceling it after the Columbine event, and thank you for not canceling it after all the rain and mud the first 2 days. We had a great time, and that's an event like none other. We'll never forget it. So thanks, Dan, and you and Anthony. You guys saved that show with all that went on, so thanks for all that you did for that.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that.
So 2 things you guys haven't talked about. Number one, I loved how Goranson weaved in Yoda's theme. When Ahsoka said Yoda's name, they really quickly weaved in Yoda's theme, so I thought that was cool. And then Grogu. Okay, so first of all, I got to give my lovely wife Andrea from Phoenix credit for this. She brought it up, and then Peter and Chad had the same thought. But in the original trilogy and the prequels, they constantly used people's names as characters. The special effects guys, they'd flip names around, they changed the words. What if Grogu is a play on George Lucas? So the first 4 letters, G-R-O-G, are to reference George's first name, and the U is to reference Lucas. Dave has always said George is the Yoda of Star Wars. They can't name him Yoda, but they could name him Grogu. What do you guys think?
Wow.
Good stuff, man.
That's an interesting thought. I like it.
I like it too. I like it a lot.
I could see them doing that in honor of George. I could definitely see them doing that.
Yeah. The way they twist away around the names to create a new name, and that makes all the sense in the world. I'm really glad that you brought that up, Eric, and I hope you pass along the best to Andrea and the entire From Phoenix family, and have a great holiday season.
All right, I think that's going to do it for us. As we bring in the theme here, boy, we could just go on forever. As I say, I've got so many notes, probably more notes for this episode than I have had for really any episode of The Mandalorian.
Anything left over that you didn't get
things, to? Well, there's a few things. I just like the idea of Jedi communion. There was that moment. Dan Madsen, as a Star Trek fan, will certainly appreciate the fact that there was definitely that connection between, of course, Ahsoka and Grogu, where she was able to discern his name. We haven't really seen that in Star Wars. Very much a mind meld kind of thing going on, I think, in Star Wars. Dan, did that strike you as a mind meld going on between
as a mind
Grogu
meld
and
thing?
Ahsoka?
I thought the same thing, except he's not touching him. It's just kind of from a distance. But I did think that for a minute. That's an interesting thought. And I wanted to bring Grogu. Grogu here, come here. Grogu is here in my kitchen. There's Grogu.
Look at this. We got Dan's dog and his wife here. Now, what's Grogu's real name? This isn't.
This is Baguette in real life.
Oh, Baguette. Oh, I love that.
Is Baguette what kind of dog is Baguette? What kind of dog?
She's a French bulldog.
French bulldog. Well, Baguette certainly is not Grogu, but the floppy ears are definitely consistent with the characters.
Well, if
so
you put the floppy ears sideways, it kind of looks like Grogu.
Oh, we love
anyway,
well, Dan. Dan,
love
any last thoughts that you have about this episode and the introduction of Ahsoka Tano into the live-action Star Wars universe?
Well, I think I love the fact that they're bringing Ahsoka into the live action, and that part of it I'm very happy with. As you know, I mean, I'm extremely fond of Ashley, and I still think she could have brought the character to life even more and even better. But they're doing an acceptable job with Rosario, and I'm anxious to see what happens going forward and with Rosario, and I'm just glad that they're continuing to tell Ahsoka's story, and I know Ashley would feel that way as well. So this was a great episode. There's no doubt about it. I mean, every episode of The Mandalorian, I just am glued to the TV watching it. I can't get enough of it. So, bravo to Filoni and the team to how good they're doing. I think it's some of the best Star Wars ever made.
Well, that's very kind coming from somebody like Dan. Only 3 episodes left. By the way, Dan, if folks are interested in your particular take on Star Wars and other things, where's the best place for them to follow you these days?
They can follow me on Twitter at @Dan Madsen, or they can follow me on Facebook at Dan Madsen Official.
Now, Dan,
my official page, and they can find me there.
Real quick, I want to ask. You had said something fairly publicly online not that long ago that you were working on some memoirs. Is this true? Are you working on a chronicle of your life?
I am, and it was as a result of the last time I was on your show. I've been getting a lot of requests for a long time, and after being on your show, I got even more requests, and so it finally just kind of inspired me, and I thought, maybe it's time to sit down and put all these thoughts together and all these experiences, and I've met so many people from all of these different franchises. I have so many stories that have never been told, that I would love to be able to tell. So, We'll see. I mean, yeah, I am working on it, and probably it'll be another year before it's ready to see the light of day. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I hope everybody will love it when it does come out.
I can't wait.
We are definitely looking forward to it. And, of course, the guy who sacrifices so much for us when he stays up late, my goodness, what are we looking at? 3 a.m. Paul Bateman. Paul, thank you so much. And not only for being on the show, but also all of the stuff that you put out on your social media channels and, giving us access to your very, very deep archives of artwork and, of course, in the context of your incredible knowledge. We always appreciate that. Any final thoughts on this particular episode and the future of Star Wars?
Quick burn. I think I'm going to have to burn through a bunch of stuff really quickly.
Please.
I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if the droids show up at some point. I think R2 and 3PO, I think it would be a no-brainer for them to sort of turn up in the show eventually. So I think, if you look at the animated shows, especially Clone Wars, and how all the characters were used, and Rebels too, the way you got like Leia and Lando and Chewie turned up, I think that is the best reason to suppose that maybe we'll get larger characters like Luke turning up. But I think the easiest ones will be masked or CG characters like droids or Jar Jar. So, but I think they'll probably save those for kind of a series finale or something like that. I also think Ahsoka's costume was so great that I think we can expect to see it everywhere at Celebration. Lots of people are asking about Yaddle and what happened to Yaddle. I think they're probably saving it, and they're eventually going to end up with a Yaddle and a Yarl Poof buddy cop show because everybody's getting a spin-off. And I can't believe that Dave has only directed a handful of live-action shows and he's already doing a Kurosawa, and I think George would absolutely go crazy for this episode.
For sure. All right, Jimmy Mack, final thoughts. Chapter 13. We only have 3 more episodes to go of this season. Mandalorian Season 2. Go for it.
My final thoughts will be so long, it'll probably be the season finale by the time I'm done talking. So I'll try to tone it down just a little bit and edit myself. But I can tell you that I was so relieved to get the information about Baby Yoda. We've been waiting a season and a half to learn about just get a little taste about the origin of this guy and where he came from, and I think that's just going to enrich our experience with the series as it continues. It was worth the wait too. Little things about the episode I really liked. The Corvus soldier tracking the Razor Crest with that thing that looks like a pricing gun as it flies. That's a classic Star Wars move going back to Yavin Base. You see a ship coming in, and you have to be elevated up high off the ground, and then you track it in, and you hold like a pricing gun while you're doing it.
It was Lorne Peterson, wasn't it? It was a light meter or something like that.
Was it Lorne Peterson? Of course, Lorne Peterson was the guy who actually was the rebel soldier who was tracking the Falcon as it was landing on Yavin Base. And the reason why they picked Lauren to do it was they were shooting in Guatemala, and they had a garbage can up on a stick that was way up high, and they picked Lauren because he was the only one who didn't have kids at the time. So if he fell to his death, the effect on his family might be not as much as a guy who had little kids. So that's a true story. You can look that up. I'm not making it up. Something else I loved about this episode, visually, the skeletons inside of those prisoners who were trapped. They were tied up on those poles, and they were being shocked. If you freeze frame it, you could see their skeletons and their skulls when they're getting shocked. It was terrifying. I tried to do a freeze frame, but yes, like Vader when he lifted the Emperor and threw him into the chasm in Return of the Jedi, you can see his skull. And even if you look closely enough and freeze frame it at just the right times on Return of the Jedi, you can even see Vader's electronic parts inside of his skeleton. But here you see it again. They get shocked, and you can see rib cage and skulls. I thought that was a really cool little touch. I tried to freeze frame it, but I discovered that Disney Plus has implemented some technology that has made it impossible for me to freeze frame anything on PC browsers and iOS. So hats off to you guys at Disney Plus for figuring that one out, you bastards.
Cool.
I love the Magistrate with the Beskar spear. I thought that was cool. And speaking of weaponry, I thought it was really funny and rather consistent with the Star Wars universe that the Mandalorian, upon seeing a lightsaber for the very first time, refers to it as a laser sword. I know a lot of people made jokes about Luke Skywalker saying that in Episode 9, but in all honesty, I've heard Ben Burtt talk about the fact that the laser sword is what they called the lightsaber when George Lucas was working on his early drafts for Star Wars, and you can look up those early drafts and see references to laser swords. I don't think it's until the third draft where George finally decided to start calling it a lightsaber. So, like Anakin, who was a slave, the Mandalorian calls it a laser sword when he sees it. He's not familiar with the term lightsaber. He barely even knows what a Jedi is. He's been sheltered for most of his life from information about the Jedi. And so this is probably, I think, most likely what the average citizen in the Star Wars galaxy referred to a lightsaber as, a laser sword, because that's what it is. That's just the common terminology for it. But we know it's called a lightsaber. And despite never seeing the Jedi before, Ahsoka obviously impresses the Mandalorian enough. In his first skirmish with her, he gets to talking with her. They devise his plan, and he knows the reputation of the Jedi. He said, a Mandalorian and a Jedi, they won't see it coming. Well, it didn't take long for the Mandalorian to realize that the Jedi are powerful, and Ahsoka obviously did impress him. I think Ahsoka's appearance in this episode is definitely a setup for an Ahsoka standalone series, as we talked about in this episode. Here's my Dan Madsen pin again for everyone to see at home. I'm still fondling little dams.
Say, quit playing with me, there, Jimmy Mac. Quit playing with me.
So
I got one question before we scoot, guys. One question.
What?
If Kylo Ren turns out to kill Baby Yoda, how are all his fans going to feel about that?
Oh, the Kylos? Who cares? Hey, Paul, here's your answer. Who gives a crap? Mandalorian is some of the best Star Wars storytelling I ever heard. I don't think that we're going to see any kind of tie-in like that, and I think they'd be fools to have Baby Yoda get killed off in any way, shape, or form. There has to be, give them to the space whales, the Purgles, and they could fly off into hyperspace with them. But the last thing I want to see is this guy to be harmed in any way, shape, or form, especially by Adam Driver. But, thinking about how this does set up an Ahsoka standalone series, I wonder about Dave Filoni and his continuation with the Mandalorian. I think if he's shown such an attachment to Ahsoka, I think he's going to maybe break away from Jon Favreau and go off on his own. And he's been working toward this for the better part of a decade and a half. Dave Filoni certainly does deserve to helm his own live-action Star Wars series or film, and I believe we will see him go off on his own to be the showrunner for an Ahsoka series, whether it's a mini-series, a multi-season series like The Mandalorian has become, or a standalone series that then evolves into a film franchise for down the road.
Do you think Luke might have sent her off hunting for... Sorry, Jimmy. Do you think Luke... You keep popping such interesting ideas in my head, I can't help but ask. Do you think Luke might send Ahsoka off to try and find Jedi to populate his academy?
Well, he might in the future, but I don't think he has any sort of influence on what Ahsoka's doing right now, because if that were the case, she would know exactly what to do with Grogu. Baby Yoda. I still can't do it. But I think that there's definitely potential for that to happen in the future of this series. I'm really leaning hard on Luke Skywalker being the Jedi that will eventually come and take Baby Yoda with him. And that's how I think the Baby Yoda story will end until it is deemed time to continue it in the future. It's unfortunate they painted themselves in a corner with Luke and the Jedi Academy and Kylo Ren and all of that stuff. They've kind of painted themselves in a corner for the next 30 years of Star Wars storytelling, the 30-year period specifically between Return of the Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. And that's a little unfortunate. But, hey, let's see how they work around it. Baby Yoda didn't eat eggs in this episode. And that's how I'm going to end my final thoughts. And it's kind of silly. It's kind of silly that people were debating it. They can debate all that. They can frown upon that till their heart's content. But we'll keep talking about these amazing additions to the Star Wars mythology that the Mandalorian's given us each and every week, and loving it.
All right, that's going to do it for us. We will see you next time. Huge thanks to Paul Bateman and Dan Madsen. We'll see you next time here on Rebel Force Radio and the Mandalorian After Show. Until next time.
Thank you, guys.
I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.
Love you guys. See you next week.